Hey everyone, happy Monday. A look at the weekly weather outlook and beyond across the U.S. The big story right now, obviously, is the remnants of the major Winter Storm Fern, across much of the south central U.S. up into the northeast. Looking at snowfall total analysis over the last 72 hours, we see many areas of 6+ inches of snow extending not only for parts of the southern Rockies, much needed snow there for the southern Rockies, but also from parts of far north Texas, Oklahoma, stretching all the way to northern portions of the mid-Atlantic and into the northeast areas. They're seeing a foot or more of snow. And of course, south of this, not shown here, was significant freezing rain as well from northeast Texas across the northern Gulf coastal states and into the mid-Atlantic as well. Broad swath of a quarter to half inch of freezing rain, ice accumulations, local areas of 1 inch or more. And of course, what we're seeing behind that is brutally cold air across much of the central and eastern US. We look at sort of the current temperature anomalies. As of this morning, we were seeing temperatures really 10 or more degrees below average for this time of year for many portions of, again, central and eastern US, but really across the southern US, we're seeing across Texas and Oklahoma, Kansas, those areas seeing temperatures 20 to 40 below average for this time of year. And really, the story's not going to change. I'm going to kind of go through the forecast right away, but we're going to see continued below average temperatures for the central and eastern US throughout this week. Things moderate a little bit, but really it's going to stay quite cold. Moderates more for the southern plains, but we're going to see a resurgence of cold air once again later this weekend. This weekend, as a very significant storm develops across the eastern seaboard, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Perhaps significant winter weather down into the Carolinas. But beyond that, it's really not only what we've been talking about the past week, but really a lot of this winter. Warm out west, cold out east, and that looks like that's going to linger into next week. Again, one of the ways we sort of look at the stability of the polar jet and the polar vortex, because we really have the polar vortex extending pretty far south into North America, into the U.S. here. We can look at the Arctic oscillation, which is sort of the stability of the polar vortex. And when that's negative, the polar jet stream tends to be more wobbly, or we have intrusions of the polar vortex into the U.S., and that is very negative, as negative as we've seen it this winter. And really, the GFS forecast did quite well with this, showing this negative AO forecast. And really, the next 7 to 14 days shows it remaining very negative and kind of aligning with the temperature forecast we're seeing over the next 6 to 10 days. For next week, that is, temperatures very likely remaining below average for many portions, especially of the eastern U.S., above average for the western U.S., generally dry or below average precipitation for much of the U.S. We'll see more near normal to slight chances for above normal for far north portions of the U.S. and far south portions of the U.S. across Texas as we go into next week. One of the things I want to call out, we're going to focus a lot on the eastern U.S. in this discussion, but I just wanted to call out in the west as well. Since I live out west, I know many folks are talking about the snowpack, about ski conditions. Outside of portions of the Sierra Nevadas and northern portions of the Rocky Mountains of Wyoming and Montana, and a few locations in far northern Washington, most of the western snowpack is well below average, 50% or less of where it should be for this time of year when we look at the snow water equivalent. That is, if we melt down the snow, how much actual liquid equivalent is within there. And the USDA and the NRCS here has tracked that over many decades. We kind of look at where we should typically be for this time of year. Pretty poor snowpack for the West so far. It's probably going to be hard to recover for many areas, even if we do get an active late winter. But not good in that regard. Also, one of the things we've not been really talking about is atmospheric rivers or much precipitation across the U.S. We actually are going to see a weak atmospheric river. We're looking at the GFS integrated vapor transport. That's how much moisture is being advected across the eastern Pacific into the U.S. We're happening with ridging areas of higher pressure across the western U.S. That's been forcing the storm track more north across British Columbia especially. So they've been getting the brunt of the precipitation in parts of Alaska as well, really over the last few weeks. It's mostly going to remain the same. We have this weak area of integrated vapor transport and precipitation moving into the Pacific Northwest mid to late week. Euro and GFS model are in pretty good agreement. More later this week and this weekend, but most of that gets deflected north, especially as we go into later portions of this weekend and into next week. So not any major rainfall, but some needed precipitation for the Pacific Northwest mid to late week. Now, when we look sort of at the forecast here, going to compare the GFS and the European mid-level of the atmosphere, 500 millibar vorticity. What you're going to see is continued troughing across the east, ridging across the west. And we see sort of one trough here across the eastern U.S. that's going to kind of move and pivot around the broader polar vortex here that's, based across eastern portions of Canada. Continue to see trough after trough sort of rotating across this. What we're really going to watch out for is we head into later this week. We kind of see these weak disturbances coming across the west, moving along the periphery of sort of the polar vortex here. That'll bring some slight precipitation chances, generally again, Pacific Northwest and portions of the Rockies. What we're really going to turn our attention to is this significant shortwave trough that digs across the Great Lakes down into the east central U.S. and kind of closes off into this intense shortwave trough. And that really is a very intense deep trough, very far south, even for this time of year. The other thing I'll call out as well is we continue to see preferential ridging across the west. We're seeing some indications of maybe some cutoff troughs developing across the desert southwest the U.S. The Euro and the GFS are both showing this. The only reason I call this out is that these can produce northeasterly winds or Santa Ana wind events for portions of California. So as we head into next week, we might be looking at perhaps some signal for some Santa Ana winds. Again, there has been some rain within California, of course, this winter, so the fuels aren't as dry there, but something to keep an eye on. But again, the bigger story is going to be this trough right here, as it appears to kind of close off into this very deep, anomalously low southward position for a trough later this week, but mainly into this weekend. And again, you'll just see that continue to see troughing across the east. That's going to also be represented by colder temperatures. And when we sort of look at, okay, what does this actually mean in terms of surface pressure, areas of low pressure, and precipitation, we see that right now we have this broad area of high pressure with very cold air based across Texas right now. That's going to sort of remain in place for the most part. We'll see on and off chances for snow showers across much of the central and eastern U.S. this week. We see this storm system and weak atmospheric river moving into the Pacific Northwest midweek. We'll see kind of on and off rounds of precipitation there, on and off rainfall for portions of South Texas and into Florida. But look what happens as we go into Friday and into Saturday. That shortwave trough that I talked about, the response to the surface is going to be a rapidly developing area of low pressure. That's what's forecasted by the models right now. And with that really cold air in place, and the cold air it's going to be bringing into this area of low pressure, there's going to be a pretty good chance for snow to develop very far south into this weekend. Exact details will likely change. We're going to see shifts of where exactly this sets up will be as intense as models are showing it. Right now, there's good agreement within the models, but of course that could change. But really what's setting up is the potential for heavier snowfall amounts very far south, potentially into the Carolinas, and this area of low pressure is going to deepen significantly, at least as models show it right now. So that's also going to bring a pretty considerable wind component. That would bring, the potential for blizzard conditions and overall just really strong winds that could cause some issues for infrastructure as well. We talk about the utilities that are already still recovering from the major winter storm that we just experienced out east. Where exactly that sets up. If that area of low pressure sets up further east, winds will be a little bit lighter across the coast. But if it remains forecast where it is right now, this could create some pretty significant issues. Again, both in terms of snowfall totals, but wind as well for the eastern seaboard. So we'll keep a very close eye on this when we look at the NOAA's probabilistic winter storm severity index. We are beginning to see as we head Saturday and Sunday for moderate impacts. We're seeing 40 to 50% chances of moderate impacts from just snowfall alone for portions of the Carolinas. Again, we could see higher impacts as well. A lot to be determined, but keep an eye on that storm for this weekend.